What's up, YouTube? How are you guys doing? Today, I want to give you a little introduction into webhooks and how they work and why they are so powerful. And if you're working on ops, then this will definitely ease up your life. Now, most of the people, they are kind of appalled by the term webhook itself and think it's too technical, but I'm going to show you that it's actually quite easy to deal with them. And then first of all, obviously, why they are so powerful. And I've prepared a very simple use case, and which is this flow that I would like to build with you. And we are receiving some kind of data via the webhook. So this could be from a form, this could be from a CRM, from an app, wherever you can imagine. And we would like to put it into a Google Sheet before cleaning it up, right? So this is the whole process. And when I jump into Postman, then you can see that this is the data we're dealing with, right? And I'm going to get into Postman in a second, what it is. And this is the data, which could be coming from a form, for instance, right? Which could be sent to the webhook. And we would like to put all of this data into a clean sheet like this one. This could be a database, it could be Google Sheets, whatever. Now, it's just a second before we start about Postman. If you're not familiar with that, if you are dealing with APIs, which is what we are dealing with most of the time, if we are using n8n, then you can see that this is a very handy tool and very convenient way of testing anything related to APIs. It's a free account. They are available for any platform that you have. And it's a very powerful tool to test webhooks also, and obviously also anything in relation to APIs. So when I jump back, you might think this looks a little overwhelming, but I'm going to promise you that all we are dealing with today is extremely simple. So if you look at this, then we have a method that we can use. Then we have a URL that we can use, and this is the data that we are sending to our webhook. So just as a prerequisite that this is what we are going to use just to simplify things, and then later on we can get into Postman itself in a later tutorial, but this should not be the main topic of today. All right, so how does this work? I'm going to clean this flow up, and then we're going to start from scratch. So I've cleaned up the flow, and now let's jump into the first step, which is to actually add a webhook trigger node, right? So there are basically, if you look for webhook, there are two types of webhooks, if you will. The first one is a webhook trigger one, and the second one is the respond to a webhook, and we are going to cover both of them. So the first one is, and you can see this by this little flash icon, is the trigger. And when I open this, then I am confronted with a lot of options, but they are quite easy to understand. So the first one is that we are getting a URL, and this is something that n8n by default already provides us with, and the ID that you see at the end, and we're going to get into the URL structure in a second, will always be generated freshly, basically, so that you don't get into clashes of the same URL that you want to deal with, right? Because the reason being is that first of all, we have to understand what webhooks actually are. And if we are dealing with APIs, then you might have already taken a look into API docs, into API reference docs. And I have picked, just as an example, the one from Airtable. And if you aren't familiar with Airtable, just take a look at it. It's basically a way how you can build databases quite conveniently, but which are really robust, and you can build databases which in themselves include tables again. And let's take a look into what this specific endpoint does. So as you can see, we are getting a URL, or we have a URL that Airtable provides us with, right? And there's also a method, and this might look familiar already to you. And this specific endpoint, this URL, so it's the base URL, including a specific endpoint, does a certain job. In this case, it's going to list the bases, right? And this is why the reason why I pulled out my overview. And here you can see I have a couple of databases within Airtable, and this endpoint would just be there to provide me with information about all the bases that I have within my account, right? This is everything this specific API endpoint does. And you can see this from here because we have a response, and this is the response that we are receiving. So this is a 200. So in case this was successful, this is the response we are receiving if we call this specific endpoint, right? And right now we are switching sides. We are switching perspectives basically, because what this does, or what we are doing, is that we are the ones right now with the webhook that we are providing this URL, or any URL obviously within our n8n account, to the public, to a user who can use this to do some certain things, right? And this could be to list something, or this could be to, send over some data, which is what we're going to do today. And this is all there is. So fundamentally, webhooks are nothing but API endpoints as well, right? But they're just a special kind of them. So having said that, if we jump into n8n back again, then if we open up the trigger node, the trigger webhook node again, then you can see that this is the URL, which is for testing, right? So there's a test URL and a production URL. And if you take a closer look, then you can see that they are almost exactly the same, especially in regards to this specific path, because the production URL only is missing the webhook dash test. So when I jump into the test URL, then you can see it says webhook dash test, and the production URL looks exactly the same. It's just missing the dash test, right? Now, you can adjust this whole path, right, to make it a little more readable if you prefer that. So this could be, endpoint X, let's call it like that. And now you can see that it already adjusted the preview in the production URL as well as in the test URL. Right? So now the next thing is that we have the method, right? And depending on what you want your subsequent flow within n8n to do, you can adjust this as well, right? So you have the option to choose between, all the familiar kinds of methods that we are used to. So if you want to provide the user, and this is the reason why I pulled out this example, if you want to provide the user just with a specific response, then this would be the right method. If you want them to be able to send over some data, for instance, this is what we're going to do today, then the post method would be the appropriate method, right? And this is something that the sending system would have to know, because if we jump into Postman again, then you can see that we also have the option to choose. The next part is that we can even create an authentication, so that even if somebody does have access to the specific URL, you can restrict access to the user if they have a user account, basically. So what you can do is that you add an authentication, and there are a couple of familiar authentication methods, as you can see. And the first one is basic auth. We're not going to get into authentication right now, but you can see that you now have the ability to create new credentials, and this is what I'm going to do right now. And here you can say that you just want, to have the user with this specific credentials to have access to your flow, right, to this specific webhook. So if I save this and I go back into it, then now you can see that the credentials have been saved. I just didn't give it a name. It's called unnamed credential. But now if you call this webhook URL, you will have to pass on the parameters, so the credentials as well, when you want to have access to the specific webhook, right? Now, in regards to the response, which is also quite interesting, because what you can do is that you respond to the call itself immediately. This will just give the user some kind of response that his call was successful, right? And if we jump back into the Airtable docs of the API references, then you can see that this is exactly what's happening here, right? So there's some kind of response, and this is just giving the user a little feedback so that he knows that something has happened, right? And we're going to take a look into this in a second as well. I'm going to lose the authentication for now, so I'm going to none again, just to see how this works. And by the way, if we want to test this, then we can switch to the test URL and then say listen for test event, and this is appropriate if you obviously want to test this, right? So when I click on here, then this is listening for an event, for a test event. And now if I copy this URL, then I can paste this into my Postman account. I'm going to paste this in here, and this is exactly the one that we just saw, right? So it does have the dash test in it. I will have to adhere to the method, to the HTTP method, and I'm going to switch this from get to post. And now I already have some data in here, right? So I'm sending this via the body, and this is just some raw JSON, and I'm going to send this. And now you can see at the top, at the bottom of the screen, that this is the response now. So Postman works like this. The top is the request, the bottom is the response. And then first of all, I get it to 100, right? So this is the same response that we expect from any API call that we are doing. And within Postman, this is now the standard or the default response that I got from n8n, which was sent back to me, so that I know, as the one who requests this, that the workflow has started, or was started. So when I go back into n8n, then now you can see that this is the data that I have received via the webhook, And as you can see, this is exactly the data that I have sent it to. So you have the body, and now I have the name, and this is just some sample data that I created. And here you can see also the execution mode was test, and then the webhook URL, which was triggered. Right? And this is a very convenient, first of all, but also a very powerful way to get data from outside and to have an event-based workflow, because you can also use this, which is one of the most frequent use cases, for notifications, right? So if, let's say, you triggered a process outside of your own system, then you can send this URL to the system before, so that it notifies you as soon as the process is done, right? Because sometimes you just don't know how long that process takes. Sometimes it may take a minute, sometimes it might take a day, and then you will be notified because you were able to pass on this specific webhook URL, and this enables you to have a very, very an elegant workflow. All right, I'm going to close this again, and we're going to go on with the next part, which is just adding an LLM. So I'm looking for OpenAI, and I'm going to message a model, and I'm not going to get into too much detail right now. And now I have prepared a prompt. So these are the settings within the message a model node. So I have connected the account to my OpenAI account. The resource is text, operation is message a model, obviously, and then the model that I used was GPT-5 Mini. And then we have two messages, two prompts. One is a system prompt, the second one is a user prompt. Extremely simple. I'm going to open up the system prompt. You are a data normalizer for operations workflows. Input fields are these ones. Return strict JSON with the following keys. Rules, job title, clean is one short role word such as RevOps, support, BizOps, and so on. Intent summary, maximum 20 words, only return JSON, no extra text. That's already it. User prompt, this is the next data set, and then I'm passing on the variable from the previous webhook node. All right, so let's test this, and I'm going to execute the workflow. And now again, it's waiting for the URL to be triggered, right? And I'm going back into Postman, going to click send again. I did get the same message back into n8n. Now we have received the data and it's being passed on to the model itself. I'm going to open this up and this is now the output, right? And we are going to get into the more specifics later on. All right, now the only thing left is that we want to add this to a Google Sheet, and I'm choosing append row in sheet. Going to open this up. It's connected to my Google Sheets account. Resource is a sheet within a document. I want to append a row. The document is the demo webhook data. The sheet is only sheet 1. And then I'm going to map each column manually. And then I want to add a timestamp. So I'm going to use an expression for this, which is called now. I'm going to format it into this format, into ISO. Then I'm going to use the name of what we have received from the form or from the CRM, whatever. So from the incoming data from that system. I'm going to drag and drop this into name, email, company. And now I have the two fields, job title clean and intent summary, and this is coming from the model before, right? From the node before. Now, one little thing you might notice is that the content was this one, right? So this is the output from the GPT model, and I can't access only the job title like I can do it here, right? And that's because if I jump back into the previous node, that's because I forgot to toggle one option, which is output content as JSON. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to execute the step again. And now you can see that it has been separated into their specific fields, right? So I can now access both of them independently. I'm going to go into the subsequent Google Sheets node. I'm going to scroll down to job title clean, and now I can just drag and drop job title clean and intent summary, and they will be coming from the OpenAI node. All right, that's already it. I'm going to execute this step. We're going to take a look into the table itself. It's empty. I'm going to execute it, and it's done now. And when I jump back into the table, then now you can see that the data is there. All right, so back into n8n. So as you can see, very simple flow, but also extremely powerful and versatile, right? You can do a lot with this. Now, you might have seen the response, right, was a very standardized response. So the only response that we got from that first call was just that the message, we did get the message, workflow was started, right? And if you take a look into responses in general, that they are a little more complex and give you a little more information about what's happening in the background. And you can do this already and by yourself within n8n as well. So what we can do is that we add another webhook node, but not this time we're using the trigger node, but we are using the respond to webhook. And this already says it all, right? So I'm going to add this. And before we get into the settings, an important part is this little note here, verify that the webhook node's respond parameter is set to using respond to webhook node. So what this means is that we have to jump back into the webhook trigger node. I'm going to open this up again, and now we have to select in the respond field, we have to select using respond to webhook node, right? And that's pretty self-explanatory. And we can choose this. And now from this side again, we're getting the node insert a respond to webhook node to control when and how you respond. I'm closing this again. And this, for instance, can be added to the end of the flow. And when I open this up, then now you can see how we can respond, right? So we can respond with the first incoming item. So we would respond with this so that the user knows, all right, the data has been sent in this format, and this is the data that came out of this. But we can also respond with a custom JSON, right? So we can build our own JSON. And this is exactly, if you look into other responses, right, again, then this is exactly what's happening here, right? So I can build really complex JSON schemas that are a little more, I wouldn't say verbose here, but, you know, give you a little more information about what's happening. All right. And And or we can just use a very simple text body. So we can say workflow completed, just as the example suggests, workflow completed. And then we're going to close this, going to save this, and we're going to start the flow again. Going back into Postman, I'm going to replace this data set with another one. All right, this is the data that we are sending now. And let's take a look into, first of all, the response, right? As soon as the flow is finished, I'm going to click send. And now you can see that nothing's happening, right? We are not getting a response immediately, just as before, right? Because we chose to respond at the very end. And when now the whole flow is done, we can look into the data itself. And this is great. This has been added as well. And if we jump back into Postman, then now you can see that we're getting the message workflow completed, right? And there's no limitation to whatever you can imagine how you want to respond to the specific webhook. You can do a lot with this, and as you can see, there are not only textual options, but you can build really complex responses how you want to access this. And again, in addition to this, you are not limited to one response, right? So you can just in between add another response to webhook and add this in between right here, just so that the user knows, all right, something is happening right now as we speak. And if the rest of the flow might take a long time, then the user already did get some feedback that something's happening. And then if that's done, then he gets a response back again. Right. All right. So this is already it in regards to webhooks. As you can see, they have a very high practical use case, right? You can do really a lot with them. They give you a lot of flexibility. You are not limited to anything. Obviously, if you look for forums, right, for kinds of forum triggers, then you might think, all right, what do I need webhooks for? But obviously, you are bound to the limitations and restrictions of the provider, right? If you use something like Typeform or if you use Google Form, then you are restricted and bound to what they give you, right? And how they are built. But webhooks, obviously, as you can see, give you a very powerful way how you can build your own API endpoints. Now, if this was helpful to you, then I would be very grateful if you subscribe to this channel and liked and shared this video. And then in addition to that, I am building Script AI School. So if you want to learn even more about webhooks, and we are going to get into the really technical stuff like the authentication methods that we talked about and everything there is. And if you are new to n8n, then you can start with the n8n basics. You will have access to everything that I've built. I will share all the n8n flows. I will share prompts, everything there is. We will build AI agents. We will build RAG systems so that you can even equip your agents with internal knowledge from your company, whatever, and we will get into so much more. So if you want to join, at the time of this recording, the school is still free. It will be paid in the future, but if you join today, then this will be free for you forever. All right, I highly appreciate your attention. I hope to see you next time, and see you then. Bye.